Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Earth Exchange Cafe in January of 2024. Happy New Year to everyone. We meet every month here on Zoom at our virtual cafe, which we hope feels like a real cafe. It's an opportunity to settle back for an hour with your tea or your coffee, your hot chocolate, and to imagine yourself in a beautiful cafe with lots of books and magazines scattered about, tables where you can have interesting conversations, really good music playing. And it's a place to get to know interesting people. We talk with artists and writers, thinkers and doers, people who know how to face the hard times in life and on the earth and how to find and make beauty there. And so enjoy yourselves, please, and relax for the next hour. And we have a wonderful guest today, whom Harriet is going to introduce, the musician and collector of songs and lover of the earth, Sam Lee. So Harriet, take it on.
Thank you, Toby. Wow. Welcome, Sam. It's wonderful to have you here. Just to describe you in your own words from your website at the Nest Collective, you describe yourself as a restless workaholic, and you are highly inventive, original singer, a folk song interpreter, passionate conservationist, committed song collector, and successful creator of live events. And with that, you are a passionate conservationist of old music, and your albums reflect that with this wonderful footprint that you have in your own musical way. Just welcome you so very, very welcome here, Sam. And just would love to ask you a story, although on your website you tell us a little bit about your childhood and what you were like as a child, but I'd love to expand that. What were you like as a child, and what are the threads that are weaving through from that place in your life that feel like they're coming up for you as an adult in what you're doing right now?
I'm not yet an adult, I don't think. I'm still holding on to that inner child, as I'm sure all of us are trying to. What was I like as a child? I was dreamy. Still am a bit. I was a little bit beating to my own rhythm, as my parents would say. Very shy. Very shy, very quiet, deep listener. Loved nature, was so comfortable in the natural world. And I was also very emotional child, very sensitive child, still am. What changes in us? That's what I ask always, is how do we hold on to that memory we have, that inner child that's still within us, and not grow stiff and hard as is so easy to do in this world.
Yeah, and to keep that and to keep it precious, that sort of mix between vulnerability and softening of being emotional, but actually through that might be something quite wondrous and wild and necessary to bring. And just tell me a little bit about where music fits in with that.
Well, I was very lucky musically in many ways. I had a very I didn't come from a folk music family. Though my dad was a musician, not professionally, but was a guitar player and sang for us, and we, and listened to lots of music. Nothing particularly rare or unusual. My mum liked her opera. My dad liked his Paul Simon and the Beatles, and pretty standard home in that sense. With his jazz, he was a jazz man. But I was sent off as a child on the summer camp called Forest School Camps, which is an equivalent to the kind of famous American summer camps, but was a gathering of real radicals, excuse me, radicals set up in the 1920s, and was a sort of alternative education for very left-wing leaning people wanting to understand a new way of bringing children up in the world through community, through learning by doing, experiential consensus building, community building. And I was very lucky to have found this charity as an urban London kid and was sent off for the summers. And that was where I found singing around the campfire.
Mm.
But in a very special way, with a community whose repertoire of music was very interesting. And still to this day, as a folklorist and somebody who, you know, understands the music world, seeing that songbook that we had and more songs that were just part of the repertoire, that they were very interesting, very socially minded, truth-seeking repertoire of very rare old folk songs from the UK, songs from the American campfire tradition, pop songs, rebel songs, protest songs, filthy songs, love songs, musical, burlesque songs, you know, all sorts, that created this wonderful tapestry of narratives that I grew up being enchanted by and loving these themes, and also what it meant to sing together as a community. And that instilled something quite special that I knew that I was passionate about, with this idea of how we tell stories of old times, of past journeys through song, and how powerful to instill an emotional trajectory and a perpetuation, a remembrance through music. So as I grew older to my 20s, I started to wonder what these songs were and where they had come from. And I looked into them and started discovering this thing called folk music. I didn't know what they were. They were just the songs that we sang. I didn't have any sort of classification ability to understand their progeny. And so that's where music really sunk into my bones as a form of unification, but also as rebellion.
Gosh, that's fascinating. Yeah, when you're speaking, I feel like it's like a down duvet or a down pillow that you found where you can just sink into it, and your shape just gets held by this music that you've just sort of allowed to balloon around you. It feels like music became like this supporting essence around you.
It did. I think there's also something very critical about what communal singing is and why it is so powerful, and why it has been part of our, you know, continual development as a species. Is that as a 10-year-old child who was very shy to even talk amongst my peers, you know, very inhibited, when one has the words to sing, and that we are there in sympathetic unison with one another, speaking about some very passionate subjects and some very heartfelt, tragic, you know, songs of murder and death, you know, as folk songs are, of resistance, songs of resistance, obviously, and injustice. That being able to channel all those emotions through those songs collectively in unison allowed me a space to find my voice, and also find other people's voice through my voice, and my voice through other people's. And that similarity and difference there is quite critical. And I think that's a very, very extraordinary thing for a child to have, is that sense of how they have their place to be heard, and also a place to speak out, that's safe.
Wow, yeah. And so tell me a little bit more about how that feels, working maybe as a solo artist, because what I can hear from that is, you know, there's this collaborative thing that you're talking about, on a species level, where we resonate in that unified voice, which gives meaning, it gives power to dissenting voices. So does that carry on at all when you're on your own? You're sitting with the guitar. You're on, just on your own working. What's that relationship like between the collective and the individual?
Yeah, well, I confess I never play with the guitar. They're very absent
Right.
from my music. And if anything, if I am singing alone in the unaccompanied, traditional style, or if I'm with my band, wherever I am, wherever I have music, I'm never alone, because within every one of the songs that I sing, there is a community woven into those songs. Be that the community I grew up with as a child, that are my people, they are my family, my brethren, my kindred. But also when I'm singing the folk songs, because the songs that I sing are not ones that I've learnt from songbooks or often from the revival 60s recordings. They're ones that I've learnt from my song collecting work and meeting up with the last elders and within their families, and knowing the lineage of who they were learnt from and the person that they learnt them from and who learnt them before that. I always have a sense that I'm singing, that old saying, I'm singing on the shoulders of those who came before me, of my ancestors. So I sing in full, and I'm singing proudly in company, always. I'm never alone. I always feel that difference, that if I was a singer-songwriter and, writing songs about my last breakup and, whatever, I feel a loneliness there, I think, because I'm never about the cult of the self. The songs I sing are the cult of the we, of the community, the cult of the cult, as it were. So that's for me where I sit, and maybe also what's given me the confidence to become a singer, because I don't think I'd ever done it if it would have been like, go up and be famous, go up and make a name for yourself, and so people love you. It's like, no, it's always been for me a way of being a conduit, a vessel, a spokesperson for the people who I am singing on behalf of, or in appreciation of, or in the legacy of.
That actually reflects what we were saying just before we started this, that there was a very strong collective thread, that your work really brings that in. So at what point then, with the collection, the song collection, did you begin to consider moving in towards music as activism, or with a more of an ecological or environmental bent to it? And was that a clear distinction, or did it something that happened slowly over time?
I think the way that in people's lives different causes take their course, at moments, the beats of one's life where subjects become pertinent. None of the things I sing about right now have ever not existed. I've always been an environmental activist. I would never have thought that that's what I was doing, but actually always I have been acting in defiance of the modern world, the urban, the denial of the natural world. Since I was a kid, I've been in nature. Throughout my 20s, I was studying, learning, and teaching wilderness, bushcraft, and anthropology, and learning about indigenous cultures and about relationship to nature and how to build connection to nature. And that's always been there, and that's always been part of my life practice and what I express and where I seek my own solace and pleasure and build community out of. And my events that I ran through the Nest Collective, the campfire clubs and all the concerts outdoors was all about how can I create spaces of wonder and enchantment in nature and building community in the natural world. And that is activism, as much as it is as chaining yourself to or smashing the windows of the HSBC bank, or marching through London, protesting against oil prospecting, and that sort of thing. For me, actually, building a community is as powerful as direct action. It is a direct action. In fact, it's necessary as part of it. So I've always been doing that work. There was a critical threshold when I did go for, you know, from my mid-2000s, my mid-20s, when I was really falling into folk music. I became a song collector, and I spent 15 years traveling Britain and Ireland, recording, seeking out the Gypsy traveller community. There's a lot of activism in that. Here is the most persecuted and suppressed culture and acceptably racially abused community in our country. And there I was trying to bring about a sense of cultural importance and value, and speaking on behalf of, or speaking up for a very much troubled and misunderstood community. And there came a point during the Extinction Rebellion marches of 2019, in the October Rebellion. It was a very dark time, and the police were getting very violent and aggressive. And I remember being in a place, and to cut a long story short, where I was on my way into town to attend the Writers' Rebel. Lots of brilliant novelists: Robert Macfarlane, Ben Ockrey, Jay Griffith, some of the, you know, the brilliant nature writers and writers about climate and ecology. And on my way, I got hit by a wind, like a almost like the bus came out of nowhere and hit me in my bicycle. I didn't fall off my bike, but I got blown off course down a side street that I wasn't meant to be going. And I knew instantly that I was being sent somewhere, as I often know. And when one's doing song collecting, you know where you're being sent, and you have to trust in that. So I carried on cycling and came upon Great Ormond Street Hospital, which is a children's hospital in London, central London. And I found myself outside a house, the opposite of the hospital, beautiful old Georgian terrace house with the lights on. And I recognized this place as being a bit of a music sanctuary for classical music rehearsals. And the lights were on, there, candles, there was a piano, and there was music coming out of this house. And I stopped in the kind of glow in this blustery, windy, stormy night. And as I was looking, I noticed there was a group of men dressed very smartly in like three-piece tweed suits, all men, and they all had Irish accents. And I knew instantly they were Irish travellers. So the Pavy, community based in England, lots of them in England. I recognised the accent, and one of them said to me, "Do you want a piano? I'll get you a piano." And I was like, "Hey guys, what family are you from?" They go, what do you want to know that for? I was like, you're travellers, right?
And just for Americans, travelers are Romani, you know, formerly known as Gypsies.
Not Romani at all. Very different, genetically distinct. Romani are the Eastern European. We have Gypsy traveller communities. So the travellers are the ancient pre-Celtic nomadic people of Ireland, and the Scottish travellers, and they are the community that have been there for hundreds, thousands of years, speak their own language of the Cant. Then there's the Gypsy Roma people, who are also nomadic people who've been lumped into the same group, but totally distinct. But very important to know. Big population of Irish travellers in North America and Canada. Yeah, very much. A lot of them migrated. And like the Gypsies, sing the old songs in English language songs. And I'd recorded lots of the family members of the Irish travellers. So I asked them which family they were, and they said they were of the Joyces, and I knew the family, and I knew who their family was. And I mentioned, "Oh, I know your family. I know my Christy Joyce, your grandfather." And they were like, "Geez, how the heck do you know that? How do you know your grandfather?" And I told them that I'd learnt songs from their grandfather. And they went, "Geez, would you sing us an old song then? Go on, sing us a song. You're singing, you sing us a song." And so I was like, "Okay, I'll oblige." And I opened my mouth to sing, and I started singing one of their old family songs. And one of them just interrupted and went, "Geez, I hate the fucking old songs. Don't want to hear those songs anymore." And And it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I realized, firstly, they're outside a children's hospital. One of their children is in there with probably some terrible sickness. And so I changed the subject and I said, tell me, how are two of your other family members, who were two of the most extraordinary song carriers and storytellers of ancient songs? And I asked after them, the Mongans, and they said, geez, they died this year. And it was hearing that two of these great, like carriers of ancient culture had passed away. It was such grief and tragedy for me to know these two people had passed. And I'd never been able to get back and record more of their songs. And I tried and tried and tried. It was never a good time and never right moment. And I bid them goodnight and I carried on to the protest. And as I cycled to the protest, I realized then that my time of doing the song collecting had come to an end, and that it was time to work on behalf of the climate and nature. And I felt very much like, the house is on fire, and I've been rushing into one little room, into a cupboard, a little drawer in a cupboard, and trying to save these little bit of jewels that I think are precious, and they are. And I've done as much of that as I can. And now it's time to try and put the fire out. And these songs, and the songs of our ancients and our ancestors, for me, speak to something about how we must come back into a different relationship with the world, with each other, with ourselves. And so they are vital in my journey of trying to tell a different story and bring a different melody into the climate process and the climate movement. So that's where my climate activism shifted and why I am where I am now.
That's an extraordinary story. Thank you so much for that. But the wind blew you to the place where you needed to go, instead of, skipping that side street and going straight to the protests. It's a beautiful story.
We've all had those moments in our lives, and I think part of the thing that I'm always practicing on myself and also hopefully trying to demonstrate is that openness to to many things. I think of that wind as an ancestor telling me, guiding me where to go, the guides that we have around us, the signs that we need to listen to, but be quiet enough and open enough and able to pick up those inclinations, those intuitions. And modern society doesn't permit that. It doesn't make room for it. And I think it takes a very strong-willed person, determined to do the right work, to make a life that is receptive to that. And that's something that we as a species are brilliant at doing. That's why we are such a unique species, different from every others, because we have that ability to listen to divine intention. And I think, I think that that's something we all need to think about. Where is that in my life? Does it happen to me? Does it happen to me enough? How can I permit it to be there? What do I have to do to open up to those messages?
Wow. Yeah. What I love about your story is often I think we forget that the divine speaks in alleyways in the center of cities. We think it's out in some sort of beautiful remote promontory looking over the Connemara coast or something, and the only divine speaks to us about what's actually really ours to do, when actually it can be in the middle of the city streets. And I'm just going back to what you said at the very beginning about being, when you were a child, you were shy, but you were a deep listener. So being able to do that at all, to listen and to feel the resonance of the wind itself, is a skill. What I'm interested in now is, okay, you've saved the precious rubies from the drawer in the dresser, and you're out, and the fire maybe is raging or it's moving from room to room, but there's something in those rubies that drew you, that then can be alchemized into something that can help. And I wonder what your relationship with that decoding of that encoding, wisdom in the songs is.
You're speaking my language, and alchemy is a term that for me is very accurate. In fact, it's the closest form of description that I can have to what being an artist is, and that's it. That for me is what is my cauldron? How do I cook my spells? And what are they? The songs are a very important part of that ingredient, and I'm just at the beginning of a journey of releasing new music. It sounds so technical, but I've created a body of work which is be coming out in March, under the name of Song Dreaming, and Song Dreaming is a suite of songs that are in praise and devotion to nature and our relationship to it, both joyful and troubled one. And I think often about what I'm doing in making these songs. I've written a lot, and I've worked with folksong as the basis, but they're all written by me pretty much. And that work that I'm doing is about creating an alloy, and the idea of the alloy is that one takes several metals and combines them in the right ratio, and what you create is a highly tensile or conductive or robust new material that is stronger than the sum of its parts. And each song for me I'm creating is trying to become a new alloy in weaponizing almost this music to be of service. It's a transformation from its ore, I should say, O-R-E, into a creator of awe, A-W-E. That's what I'm trying to do. How I do that, I have no clue whatsoever. I'm not a trained musician. Don't ever go into the studio or into the creative space going, oh, I know exactly how to do this. I go in as that timid 8-year-old child going, somebody's going to find out that I'm an absolute idiot and shouldn't be here and throw me out right now. But generally a kind wind blows, and if I get myself out the way, I can, with the beautiful things that I have gathered on my journey, the songs, the ideas, very, very, very much my greatest appreciation always goes to nature for teaching me the skills of ingenuity and resourcefulness and creativity. Oh my God, nature has taught me everything I need to know about how to compose music. Because all the skills and all the practices within humans' relationship and other species' relationship to the natural world is a part of the blueprint of how we are creative species and how we invent and how we know what is meant to come forth. So I just, I open my Swiss Army knife and I whittle, and something comes out that was meant to be, and it's the best I know. So that's what, for me, the transformation of these songs in. That's a little bit specific to making music. For me, there's also a much bigger work about how one amplifies that onwards into the wider world, and how does one take up the space, the digital space, the acoustic space with these messages, and not fill it up with the candy floss of the rest of the world. That for me is like, how do I, want of a better word, colonize the contemporary music, the industry, the business, with the rich, the good shit, stuff that I think the natural stuff.
Yeah, I know Harry's going to ask you about some of your music with, for example, with the Nightingale. And I live in Ithaca, New York, which is the home of the famous Cornell Lab of Ornithology. And I just happened last night to listen to a program that they did because they had just received their 2 millionth recording of birdsong from all over the world. And they played samples of some of these birds, and it's just extraordinary. Everything from the oriole to a puffin to parrots, and hearing these birds and the absolutely exquisite and individual ways that they sing and call and warn. I mean, it was, and then knowing that we were going to talk to you today and your actual performance with a bird or birds, it just seemed like one of those extraordinary wins off of the main path.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, I get the Cornell Lab emails, and I was reading that very same statistic of their 2 millionth bird, and that's a really great example, I think, of where they've created an app that we can all have on our phone, which identifies birds, but it doesn't just tell you, yeah, golden oriole or robin or curlew or songthrush or puffin. It then uploads it as usable data for their research to be able to start to build up a picture of what species are where, and so many more extrapolations. In some ways, I think that's absolutely essential, and the job of us artists is to be the communicators of data and information and receive that knowledge and that the technical side of what is gathered within the scientific realm and communicate it. And for me, that's something I love, because I love science and I love learning about nature, and I love the kind of material that builds up that sense of knowledge. In indigenous communities, there's a very, very strong sense of the science through storytelling about understanding and building up relationships and knowledge about patterns of behavior. And that's all that science is within that, biology is, it's patterns of behavior. And I also think that we live in a time where we have too much data. And I think we have to work in a way that supports or stops us shutting down, because there's an overwhelm, particularly of not bad data, of data that can depress. And so being able to manifest and reinterpret that into such a way that we can present it in a digestible form that can help people accept the things that are difficult to sometimes read or hear. Yeah.
Yeah, I was running something on at the weekend, and somebody said poetry's going to save the world. I loved that. It maybe the world doesn't need saving, but it was the idea that it's the artistry and the sort of the stuff between realities. It's the weaving, it's the way that we do it, not the data themselves, but it's the way that we connect with the data and make it meaningful, and then have our human experience, because we're learning about the other than human world. I think there's something in that. And going further into what Trebi mentioned about the Nightingale, I wonder if you can tell us something about that, and why something like such a project feels so meaningful with all of everything you're talking about our relationship to Earth.
Yeah, so for those who live in Ithaca, New York, and don't have nightingales, and in the environs of America and beyond, there is a bird that you'll know by name, and you may even know a little bit by song, that has been a native species, a migrant native species to southern England, southeast of England, and across the northern hemisphere, from as far west as East Devon and as far east as Western Mongolia. Lives in their millions, the Lucinia megarincos, which is this extraordinary, very unassuming brown bird, nothing to look at, that has one of the most famous voices in the world, is a very eloquent and extraordinary improvising singer. And nightingales have woven themselves into localized culture and folklore, folk tale, myth, legend, lore, classical compositions, poetry, obviously an impressive amount. They're a bird that has made such a huge impact on human culture and artistry, yet has become mostly forgotten and lost in contemporary times as their significance. In England, they are going extinct very fast. Within my lifetime, we will lose them from this country, if not sooner. And I feel a little bit like what I'm seeing is the same as losing those last of those old singers, and carriers of something so ancient and so informing of identity. And here is a bird that speaks so much about our collective identity, and also about migration, and about our relationship to Africa and our relationship to the whole ecosystem. They are a poster child for the state of the world. They're the canary in the coal mine. And so I have built a kind of a project and a whole sort of output of creative experiences out of the nightingale, notably live experiences of taking people into the woods every night for 7 weeks. When they sing, the males sing their mating song, that's the famous song. When the birds hear humans make music, they respond and they make music back and they sing with us in very close proximity. I'm talking like 10 feet away. A bird in the darkness of the night will sing with you very loudly, will sing along with your music, and it creates an experience of deep, potent sense of nature connection, like nothing else I've ever experienced, certainly in this country, that you can have such a profound creative interaction with a wild creature in the beauty of the spring night, in company with music, with human music, in a way that feels so embracing that we are one, that sense of oneness. And I haven't really found many other experiences in the natural world, and boy, I've looked for them, and I've been in some amazing parts of the world and met some incredible animals, but the nightingale seems to permit something that I think is the closest thing I can get to being reminded that we are part of nature and nature is part of us. There is a nightingale in all of us, and we are a little bit nightingale ourselves. So the Singing with Nightingales project has evolved. I've written a book about it. It's called The Nightingale Notes on a Songbird. It's a couple of years old, charting the history and folklore, and also my relationship of what it's like to live with a bird for 7 weeks every year in very, very regular, deep contact, and how this bird can teach us and can bring so many people into a sense of radical reimagining of what we need to do to change our lives and the system around us. So yeah, that's my kind of rather eccentric but exquisitely beautiful kind of role as being a nightingale wrangler.
That must be extraordinary for the people who, and I watched one video where there was a small group of people who went out with you at night, on a rainy night, and it must be extraordinary for them to go out and not only hear a bird, but hear it singing with a human.
Oh my, I mean, there is not a night that we don't sit there and I have to put my hand on the back of one of the people in the group who is inconsolably weeping. And, you know, we stand in a circle afterwards as we walk back in the darkness, and we have a little sharing. And people say, you know, that was the most profound experience of my entire life. And I get essays written to me, essays of people who, you know, who connect him with deep grief that they've been carrying and weren't aware, or going to quit their jobs or leave their husbands and all sorts of things. And like, you know, people who feel like, okay, this is time that I need to be thinking about what's my life purpose. You know, what do I need more of? How can nature be more part of my life? Because I felt a sense of love. I felt something so deeply profound in the natural world that we're not permitted to feel because of all the things that disconnect us from nature. And some people have it on a regular basis, and some people are longing for it. Most people, sadly, are longing for it and don't have the means or ability. And when they do, when they are introduced and led, it's the guiding that is so important. There's no expectation that anyone should go out into a bit of countryside and have a profound experience. I struggle myself. My God, nature is so sick and unhealthy and poorly treated in our country that often I go out into the country and I think, oh, I should have stayed in London. I feel much healthier and not seeing a land that's being ravaged. But luckily we have some places that are still rich in profound beauty.
That's an extraordinary story. And I think it reaffirms something that's really we hold very true to in Radjoy, which is that in the midst of what would be perceived as woundedness, difficulty, challenges, there is the joy is just waiting to burst forth. It just needs us to maybe just observe. We don't have to do anything. We don't have to invoke it or provoke it. It can just be witnessed, and the transformation then in the human heart of that then goes on to make the sense, makes the music, makes the art, makes the poetry. That's where the process happens. The magic, the alchemy begins to bubble in the cauldron. What an extraordinary thing. And have you noticed about the population of nightingales specifically? Is that still stable where you are, or is that's mind?
We have two sites. We have a site in Sussex, which is our main site. We're there from mid-April through to the end of May. And there, I like to think, because we're singing to them, but the population is increasing. We're doing a lot of conservation work there, and it's good land. There isn't intensive agriculture, and actually there's a growth in nightingales every year there. But we spend a week in Gloucestershire, which is in the west of England, at an RSPB reserve called Hynham Woods. And sadly, every year I go there, the population of nightingales is diminishing. I don't know, every year I turn up and I don't know whether I'm going to hear a nightingale. We've had them every year. And every year I think this is the last year, but there has been an exponential decline, as there is in so many other places where they're not being able to survive. There is a deep pain that goes with going to a place and not hearing us. I mean, it chokes me up thinking about it now, just this idea of where the silence is falling upon the land, and how much people don't know that's that depletion of profound beauty, of joy that birdsong is. And the nightingale is a complex, joyful song. It's not an obviously joyful song. And I think it has so many dimensions, so much complexity, and it means so many things to so many different people. And I hear a different song every night when I'm with these birds. There's a lot to learn from them, I must say, in terms of how one hears their own senses of woundedness and also hope. And a new word for me this year that I learned at the Oxford Rural Farming Conference, for those who know of that phenomenal institution organization, is the word respair, which fell out of term use in the 1700s. And respair is about renewed hope. And every time I hear a nightingale, it gives me respair. I never had the word for it.
Wow. That's a good one, and we do need it. I think we talked a few years ago and onwards, unfortunately, about baseline creep, which is what you're really talking about, where people just aren't aware that their normal in inverted commas, is less than it was a generation ago, and now it's yearly. You know, it's not even just a generation that used to hear the nightingales and now they're not there, or the cuckoos, which I don't think I ever hear it up here anymore. Maybe in certain pockets. And yes, it's like halting it deliberately and saying, well, whatever the decline, all of the reasons why the declines are happening, here is a line in the sand, and from which we can measure this baseline and this creep. And so it is ecologically such an important thing to be doing, as well as spiritually, and all of the things that we're talking about reconnecting and belonging once again to the world, wounded as it is.
Yeah, the baseline creep, as I know it, the shifting baseline, this idea of the what I knew was the sounds of the natural world around me when I was growing up will be different to now a generation today of what they hear as being how prolific the species diversity and also number of species they can hear, and how actually 100 years ago, how much more birdsong, what it would have sounded like to go on a spring walk would have been profoundly different. But we don't know. So we don't know. We were never there. So we never know how much has gone. Baselines can shift upwards though. And that's something that, you know, for me is a really exciting thing, particularly in this country, is how many extraordinary projects there are countering the brutal treatment of our natural world to create oases and corridors and spaces where nature can thrive. And hopefully we're having, you know, changes in governmental policy towards our agriculture and elms coming in the environmental land management scheme, and ways that we can start to create our farming system. And it's all about farming in the end. This is why I'm obsessed with the Oxford Rural Farming Conference. You know, our entire existence is based around farming. You know, as they say, we live due to 6 inches of soil and the fact that it occasionally rains. And that's where all of our nutrients and sustenance comes from around the world, pretty much. And we must respect that. And that can be such a force for good. Yeah.
Grounds for despair, for sure. I think that's a beautiful word. Trebi, I wonder whether would you, Sam, be glad, happy, willing to share a video with us that you've chosen? No pressure, because I know tech can sometimes throw people, but if you're up for it, would you do it?
Yeah,
we'd love
absolutely. I'm going to talk as I try and get this to happen, because you've thrown on me the administrative role to share my screen, which is really
you can do it.
So there it is. I'm going to share. If I do this, what happens? Meeting is now. Can you see my screen?
No,
Not yet.
not yet.
I'm going to try that again. I'm going to press share. No, it's not happening. And I'm going to just send this in the chat to you guys. Just one of you guys knows how to.
Okay, I can try.
Can do a screen share. And while you're getting that going, I will narrate what this song is.
Okay.
It was shared in combination with Emergence Magazine, who many of you know I've got a lovely relationship with. I'm just streaming this off YouTube, so anyone can watch this. The song is called Bushes and Briars, and the Emergence Magazine made a documentary which is coming out in May this year. It's 40 minutes about my relationship with the nightingale and my relationship to nature. It was a great honor to be part of. And I wrote a song. It's one of the songs on this new album, and it comes out of an old folk song called Bushes and Briars. But I've rewritten it to be about what it's to be like in relationship with a species going extinct, and how I confront the environmental inevitabilities, and also how I hold a sense of anchorage as well, and about despair, and about duties of love. So this is this video. Are you having any success there?
Yes, I believe that we're ready. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Can you make it full screen? See on the right hand? Yeah, that would be lovely.
We can't hear the music yet either.
Oh dear.
Through bushes.
Oh, I don't know what to do about that.
So, well, if we go, what we can do is I can cut and paste the that YouTube link into the Facebook group, and then we can certainly cut and paste it into the YouTube links as well. So if it doesn't work, then people can look at it. Trebi, one of the things you can do is if you stop sharing, and then at the bottom left-hand corner, it's computer audio can be shared, and then it's
Made my way.
easier. Still hear you though.
All right.
Maybe
Sorry.
what I will offer, and I'm sort of pleased because it's it's never the same us watching these things like this. Anyone can watch YouTube video anytime. What maybe if you permit me is can I read the lyrics out?
Yeah, of course.
And I'm not going to sing them because I'd like you to hear it as a song. And so I'll read it to you as though it was a poem, because poems will save the world.
Yes.
Through bushes and through briars, I've lately made my way. All for to hear a small bird sing, I make my peace that way. All for to hear that small bird sing, and heed what they've to say. Your speak is filled with woe betide, yet singularly sublime, a language, a liturgy, alive yet saturnine, for your rarity determines mine. Such times we find we're in the presence of a reckoning divine. Sometimes I'm uneasy and troubled in my mind. Sometimes I think we've gone too far to turn it round in time. Sometimes I'm plagued by all I should and must, and what we'll leave behind. Through bushes and through briars, eventually we stray. And if we hear the small birds sing, their requiem proclaims, you'll never hear so sweet as the birds all in the spring, as we watch them fly away.
It's exquisite. I'm so sorry we couldn't play it.
No, it's there for us all to hear and listen, maybe in
All right.
our own time.
But equally, just to hear you speak it and hear the lament in that.
Yeah,
Just
they're right.
heard. Beautiful. It makes me feel quite emotional because I think a lot of people who know about Radjoy and will be watching this will also feel that feeling, that sorrow, that loss. And so to know that we reflect that for one another, I think is important. So I think it's really, really beautifully given. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And we're almost out of time. And as we mentioned, we're starting a new bit to these Earth Exchange Cafe conversations, which is at the end to ask each of our guests, how do you personally get through hard times? What gives you life? What endows you with beauty? How do you get through?
Oh, well, I'm a very lucky man that I get to spend a lot of time in exquisite places of nature. And the 7 weeks that I live with the Nightingales is more than an overdose of the good stuff. I'm sort of, I'm drunk upon the medicine most of the spring. And I invite all of you to come and join the Singing with Nightingales experience. It is an extraordinary tonic, and it is about radical joy very much. I must remember to use that term in the storytelling side of it. So I have a great base within me, a sort of reserve, I should say, that I can tap into in these long, dark nights of January and February when the cold wind blows, that I feel always that there's a warm wind coming, and I know where to find it, and I have a life that permits me to. For me, what keeps me in check is that I also know that I have a duty to share it, and that's my purpose on this life, is to communicate that. And that every day of my life, when I'm telling the story like I am to you, or writing a song, or writing a proposal bid, or building a website or something, it's another part of that bridge that people will walk on to come into a place of closer connection. And that for me gives me motivation and joy, because I know that that's what brings so much happiness to other people, and that's what I love more than anything, is making other people happy. I'm a people pleaser. So yeah, that's how I get through it, and I'm one of the lucky ones. I have a good life, and I'm well loved by my family and my friends, but I have a soft heart too, so I don't not feel the pain of the world intensely.
And sing it to the nightingale. I think I'll take from this, I think the idea that to just be mirrored by another in nature is just such a beautiful gift. And the companionship of that, the reflection when you said about people being just weeping, and just it's transformational. It's going to stay with me, I think, for a very long time. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure that people, you've got a couple of comments on the Radical Joy for Hard Times page to read if you're willing to at some point. And then when we upload it onto YouTube, that's also a place where people can comment. So there'll be more reflections, I think, coming up. So
Yeah, welcome,
please
then.
keep an eye open. Thank you. So Trebi, will pass over to you to close the circle.
Thank you, Harry, and Sam, thank you so much. It was a really wonderful conversation, truly memorable.
Thank you, both of you, so much. I really appreciate you asking me.
And we come to the end of our Earth Exchange Cafe for this month. Next month on January 14th, Valentine's Day, February 14th on Valentine's Day, we will be talking with Day Schildkret, who makes these beautiful morning altars out of found materials. So that's next month. And for right now, we've finished our coffee, our tea, our chocolate. The music has turned off, and we've put away our books and magazines. The conversations have wound down. We push back our chairs and we say goodbye to one another until next month. Thank you all for being with us. You can hear this conversation on the Radical Joy for Hard Times website in a day or two.